Hello, I'm Laura Fangman, and I'm here to talk to everyone today about some of the real estate myths. Now, I was asked here to present this series that I'm calling Brass Tacks, and I'm sure some of us have heard or are familiar with the phrase, get down to brass tacks. So we're going to go in here not really beating around the bush. We're not really going to gloss over some of the more difficult parts of our job and then jump right into the fixes. We're really going to hit it head on. We're going to talk about the different things that are happening in the industry that we thought maybe were going to be a certain way and come to find out they're not. So today we're going to talk brass tacks on easy money and other lies we believed before we worked in real estate. And I'm sure we can all relate to having some of those miscommunications. So a little bit about me. I'm a realtor. I've been practicing since 2009. I've been licensed in several states. I've been very involved in the association at different levels, local and state. There are a lot of fantastic opportunities for that. So if anybody's interested, I know the staff would love to have some new participation. So let me know, let them know. We'd love to have you get involved. I would probably start off with just a little bit of an example. So going back a few years, we lived in Georgia. My husband was relocated for work. We moved down to Georgia. I had my license ready. We practiced down, the plan was for me to practice down there. I had my license moved by reciprocity. I had all the paperwork done. So the minute I walked in the door to the state of Georgia, I was ready to go and be a realtor because you can do this anywhere. This is a very flexible job. Sell houses anywhere. So we get down to Georgia. It is not what I expect it to be in any way, shape, or form. It's a lot different. The people are a lot different than I expected, and we were in a really small town. So it was really necessary to know everyone and be from there to an extent for the people to warm up to you, for you to be able to be trusted to do something like buy or sell a home. So it was a little bit rough, and I had a really rocky start, and there were times where we would just pray to not live there anymore. We were very excited about the prospect of one of these days relocating again, and it just really took a long time to get used to. And one of the things that we would do when we were trying to keep our spirits up was, hey, if you could be doing anything else right now, what would you be doing? And I came up with cowboy mounted shooting. That's a thing. I didn't know it was a thing, but it's a thing, and I don't know if anybody can imagine me doing this, but it's an actual thing where you get on a horse and ride really fast, and while you're riding, you pull out a gun and shoot at balloons. And I saw this on TV, and I thought it was going to be the most amazing thing I had ever seen or done, and I couldn't wait. This was my dream. If I survived living in Georgia, I was going to have this dream. So fast forward a little bit of time, and we actually were able to leave. We relocated back to Virginia, which is where we'd started from, and hadn't been there very long before I called my husband at work and I said, hey, how upset would you be if I bought a horse? And he was kind of quiet, and then he said, we talked about it for a really long time. If that's what you want, if it'll make you happy, go right ahead. So I'll save you some of the process of that story. Anybody familiar with owning an animal or a large mammal, a horse, is familiar with some of how that process goes. But there's a strange thing that happens when someone who knows nothing about horses suddenly finds a horse who knows nothing about people. And that's generally the situation you'll find yourself in if you start from scratch like I did. And I found this horse that was the most expressive horse face I've ever seen in my entire life. And he had these eyebrows, and he loved me so much. I could just tell from the moment I laid eyes on him. And I started crying in this field, and I said, I will come back for you. And I did. And I took him home. And I'd love to tell you we lived happily ever after, but the honest truth is it's still a little bit rocky all these years later. He didn't know anything about people. I didn't know anything about horses, and we learned together the hard way. By the way, the horse's name is Buck. Just let that sink in a little bit. So rule number one, never buy a horse named Buck. I don't know if you happen to have read my bio, but that's mentioned in there. It left enough of an impression on me, as did the horse. So make sure, rule number 1, never buy a horse named Buck. So that was kind of me learning lessons the hard way. We get along just fine. I don't ride him. He doesn't throw me off. It's a great relationship. I've referred to him as a very expensive lawn ornament. And his behavior has actually kind of trickled into my real estate business, because we were living in a rental property. We just recently moved back to the area. We were getting ready to buy a house. And I didn't have a house for a horse. I didn't have a barn. I didn't have a fence. I didn't have anywhere to keep this horse. So when we started looking at property to purchase, one of the key factors was it had to be ready to bring this horse home, and I was spending a fortune in boarding fees and things for this useless animal. My husband, I set him up on a drip campaign, because that's what we do. He was my buyer, and I set him up, and he'd look at the new stuff that came in every day. And one day he said, okay, let's look at houses. So we took the afternoon and we went to look at houses. And the last one that we stopped at, I didn't know what these were. He was just telling me the address, and we were going. We pulled into the house, and I drove up the driveway, and it's a beautiful driveway. It is literally a football field long, and it's lined on either side with these beautiful trees, and it's just picturesque. You drive through, and then it opens up at the end to a split foyer. And people in my neck of the woods know that it's a love-hate thing with split foyers, and I am not on the love side. And we pulled up, and I saw that house, and I said, no, we are leaving now. And my husband said, but we just got here. Doesn't matter. I don't want to see it. I'm not interested in living here. No. Well, we're already here. Why don't you just let me go in? Well, you can't go in without me, because it's kind of one of the rules. So we go in and look at the house. I walk into the landing where we're both standing there shuffling, because as a split foyer works, only so much space right inside the front door, and you must immediately choose to go up or down. And I said, this is stupid. We need to leave. And he said, well, don't you at least want to see the barn? We're already here. And as I'm sure you've guessed, we bought the house for our horse. We bought the world's most awful house for our horse. And it was a tough deal, and we got to the end, and the walls leaked, and it's been years and money and all sorts of other things. So that was another lesson that I had to learn the hard way, is never buy a house for your horse. So with all of that stuff in mind, there are some other things about being a realtor that sometimes we learn the hard way. I don't want that for you. So if you haven't already learned those lessons, we're going to go over a few of them and maybe just set our expectations, reset our expectations, because of some of the things that maybe we walked into this thinking were one way and not the other. So with all of that said, let's get into a little bit of overview of what we're going to talk about today. Lies, we'll just call them what they are. Lies, lies, and more lies. And then once we get through some of those misconceptions, we're going to work our way through to, well, now what do we do? Everything we thought we knew was a lie. Where are we going to take it from here? So we will take that back. We will see what we can do. And there's always a little nugget of truth in some of those things. So no matter how flat you make a pancake, it still has two sides. So we're going to go back and take a look at those things, those kind of top 5 things that people think before they get into the business. And we'll go back and see if we can find something positive and some little bit of truth that's going to help us make it through, because all of those myths had to start somewhere. So our first little look here, our first in our top 5 points of confusion, because that's a nicer way to say lie, is flexible hours. Everybody gets into real estate because there are flexible hours. So as texts come in and I can't think straight, that's terrific. So flexible hours in real estate. There are lots of people who are currently working other jobs, people who have small children, people who have hobbies that take them away. They cannot wait for this amazing career in real estate because it's going to offer those flexible hours. You can work from home. You can work from your car. You can work from Starbucks. You can do anything because it's so flexible. You don't have to be in the office from 9 to 5. And that's terrific. There are 168 hours in a week. You're going to work at least 169 of them. And they can be flexible as long as it's okay with your client. make sure you check with your client first, because you're thinking you're going to sleep in on Saturday morning and they're thinking, I've got a day off work and we need to be at that first house as soon as the boxes pop open right at 9 a.m. So flexible, maybe, but don't count on it. Don't count on it being your kind of flexible. And I think that's the first thing we need to think about. If we're jumping into real estate because we think we're going to have flexible hours, let's think again. The next thought that we have here is everybody has to live somewhere. So you decide you're going to go down this path, and this is such an optimistic perspective. You decide you're going to go down this path and people say, well, it's going to be great. I mean, it's not like not everybody drives and not everybody wears makeup and not everybody needs new Tupperware, but everybody has to live somewhere. You can sell houses. You have to have a place to live. Well, you're right. Everybody does have to live somewhere. And they already do. They weren't just waiting for you to get your real estate license and they were homeless up until that point. Please hurry up and get that license. We need to live somewhere. Everybody has to live somewhere, and they already do. That's all there is to it. Moving right along, the next thought. One deal will pay for everything. Now, in real estate, in all of the peripheral activities that are involved, as realtors, we are often presented with bright, shiny things and different CRMs and different ways to organize our clients and different ways to bring in new client leads, and everything's fantastic. And it's so cheap, one deal will pay for anything. So of all of those products, if it just helps you sell one more house, you're in. It's fantastic. You're going to be great in that one deal. And the rest of them, it's just cake after that. So that one deal is going to pay for everything. And if we look at this slide up here, you'll see, one deal will pay for everything. That's right. Put your money where your mouth is. Except now we realize that 94% of the dollar bills in our country have some sort of virus or bacteria on them. So maybe don't do that. Recouping your investment with one deal is not necessarily the best way to look at your clients. You cannot look at those people who are trusting you with this giant decision as a way to get money back on an investment. That's not what these people are. So yes, one deal will recoup your investment in your pre-licensing training and probably your first year of CE or PL, and maybe some of your MLS dues or your lockbox fees. But we're going to talk more about this later, because that is not how we're going to look at one deal covering your investment. We'll be right back there. The next myth is that you can be your own boss. Hooray! Nobody's going to be breathing down your neck. You're not going to have somebody that you have to answer to at the office. The broker basically works for you. I mean, you're a contracted employee. Oh Lord, you're not an employee. You're a contractor, an independent contractor, and they can't tell you what to do. They can't make you show up at meetings. You are your own boss. If you decide that you work from 10 to 2, that's you all day long. You get to be your own boss. You are, by the way, not just the boss of that schedule. You are the boss of everything. So if you think about what's going to happen here, you are the boss, and everything's going to roll uphill, of an entire brand new small business. So as a realtor, you are not just buying and selling houses. That independent contractor situation that you've now got yourself into is very much your own business. So you have to be in charge of your schedule. You have to be in charge of customer retention. You have to be in charge of marketing. You have to be in charge of your budget. You have to be in charge of all the administrative stuff. So unless you're going to hire a secretary right off the bat, get ready to do some data entry, because Lord knows how much fun that is. You're going to be in charge of research and development. All of those things fall under you. So especially right in the beginning, if you're coming into this and you are just a solo person who is going to be amazing at real estate and you're going to be your own boss, just be prepared for the people you're bossing around. Next thought here, and this is where we got our title, because everybody knows real estate is easy money. Realtors just come into the office. Apparently people just walk in out of nowhere off the street, come on in. They take them and show them a house, and then they sit back and wait for the money to roll in. It's good times. Nobody really tells you about the process of getting to the contract and the contract to close, and then taking care of your people afterward, because we are not just going to kick them to the curb once they've closed the house and we've cashed the check. That's not best practice. That is not how this works. So yes, if you want to look at it as easy money, you might, in fact, get your license, and your mother might want to move. Your sister's best friend's ex-husband's cousin might really need to buy a house, and they just happen to think of you, and you might trip and fall and sell a house. And I suppose you could call it easy money if you want to. Probably not going to be easy for the person on the other end of the transaction that has to work with you and yourself who doesn't know anything because this is the first time you've ever done it. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. So if you want to look at that as easy money, by all means. So we're covering the top 5 points of confusion. And we have now gone over these things that you hear over and over and over in the real estate sphere, and people start to believe them. People start to believe that this is the way it is, and if you hear it enough, it must be true. And so I kind of feel as though by pointing these things out, I have now crushed your dreams, much in the same way that the sneaker is about to crush this Lego man, or maybe the other way around, because I don't know if you've ever stepped on a Lego, but that is unpleasant. So somebody in this image is about to have a bad day. Somebody's going to get crushed. But it's not all bad. And even though these things that we're talking about are lies, because we know it's not easy money and we know it's not flexible hours, to the extent that people like to believe it is, it doesn't mean it's all bad. And there are most certainly silver linings, and there are absolutely ways to deal with these things that will keep you going and help your business last longer. Like we said back at the beginning, there's a little bit of truth in everything. There's a nugget of truth in everything. So why don't we take a look at those things, and we'll go back and we'll see what there is that we can actually work with here, and maybe see if we can't have some kind of good career out of the stuff that we thought we were getting into. So going back to the beginning with those flexible hours, the first thing you've got to do is take control of your time. Especially when you are brand new to the industry, it is really tough to say no. And you need a deal, and you are hungry, and you have a bill to pay, and a mortgage waiting on you, and daycare, and everything else. You need to close a deal, and that means as soon as somebody even sniffs around a property, you are there to show it to them, to ask them what else you can do, to put them on a drip campaign, to get them in the car. You cannot let other people control your time. You most certainly teach other people how to treat you. And if you are teaching them that as soon as they so much as sniff, you're going to jump running and come calling, that's what's going to happen from now on. You will now be at that person's beck and call. And if you don't respond in that way, they're going to be pretty upset, because you have now set the expectation that you are at their beck and call, and that's how things will proceed. So make sure to take control of your time. Time blocking, I have heard it said that it's a myth. I don't know that I necessarily believe that it's a myth, but time blocking can work for some people. And there are different types of time blocking. Some people have a different colored ink pen for every type of activity. So maybe you have a green ink pen for the days you're going to work, and you might have a blue ink pen for the times you're going to spend planning, maybe a red ink pen for the times you have to spend at the grocery store, or who knows what. But even when you're working full-time in real estate, you still have to have groceries. Even when you're working full-time in real estate, you still need to see your children. Even when you're working full-time in real estate, you have to carve out that time for your own personal health. So maybe that means you block out some time to go to the gym, or take a walk to clear your head and process all the craziness that's happened so far in your day. But taking control of that time is how you're going to do it. So if you need to sit down with a paper calendar and a different colored ink pen for everything you're going to do, then maybe that's the process you take. Maybe that's not going to work for you. Maybe you don't have the attention span, because Lord knows some days there are things that are happening so fast you can't think, you're spinning. So maybe the Pareto method would be better for you. Maybe you're a person who can work in short bursts, so you're going to sit down and crush it for 10 solid minutes, and then you're going to get up and walk around for 3. And if you do that, you get through your day, chunks at a time, manageable chunks at a time, but you know that it's just for this amount of time, and you can take a breather. And you stick to that schedule, and you get right back into it. So there are different ways that you can take control of that time. Some people are not thinking about a paper calendar. I happen to love a paper calendar. I like to be able to touch it and see it and flip through, and I can look at 2 different pages at the same time. And I love a pencil. You will not find me with colored pens marking different days, because I need to be able to erase. Everything changes. And nothing makes me happier than brushing those little eraser marks off. It's old school. I can't help it. I love a good paper calendar. Maybe an electronic calendar will work better for you. So maybe you need to have some sort of sync. So you have your phone, you have your Google desktop, you have your clients who can access your time. Maybe you're using some sort of system where they can schedule phone time with you. All of those things need to collectively come together. And whatever method you're using, you must be consistent. Now, there's going to be a time where you're going to take my advice and you're going to schedule gym time, and you cannot wait to get to this spin class. There's a new instructor. You're so excited about it. You've been waiting all week to get in here. They have a new song track, and you block off from 3 to 4 in the afternoon on a Thursday. And yes, Thursday morning, new buyer calls. And they really want to see this brand new house that just hit the market, and it has to happen, and they have to do it as soon as the kids get off the bus, and they will be right over to your office, and they will meet you there, and you can go see that property right at 3 o'clock. But you've already got that time scheduled. Now, it turns out that there are more hours in the day that will be after 4 o'clock. After that class is over, the class where you've now set aside this time that is so important for your physical and mental health, you have this appointment scheduled for you, and the buyer wants that time. It is okay to tell them, I am so sorry, I have already got that appointment booked. My week's book out, and here we are the morning of. Unfortunately, I can't do it at 3, but could you meet me at 4:30? And I'd be more than happy to show you the property. Or if you think you could get there a little earlier, we could look at it at 2. But do not reschedule. I know women who have rescheduled doctor's appointments for mammograms that are really important. Don't reschedule things that improve your life, because that time will make you a better realtor. That time will make you a better person. It will help you clear your mind. It will help your thoughts move in a more streamlined fashion. It will get your heart rate up, and all the physical benefits and the endorphins, and you need that time. It is not your client's business what you do with your time. In the same way that if you already had that time booked for another client, you wouldn't say, oh, well, I'm sorry, but I'm already working with Susie Smith, and we're going over to see 123 Main Street from 3 to 4, so I can't work. You wouldn't give them those details, because it's irrelevant and it's not their business. What they need to know is your availability. So make sure that you set those limits and you set that time where they can have you. You can be available to them, but it does not compromise your time, the time for you. Now, you don't want to do this all day, every day. Obviously, everybody needs a mental health day now and then, but you can't block out really important chunks of time all week long. You need to be available to your clients. This is your job. But occasionally, when that stuff happens, take that time for yourself. The other thing is setting limits. So when I'm working with clients, first of all, I find out what their best method of contact is, how they most like to be contacted, because some people do not like to talk on the phone. Is there anybody in here who enjoys checking a voicemail? It's so annoying to log in there, and then you hear this crackly voice that doesn't really even sound like the other person, and they can never get to the point, and they don't leave a phone number, and if it comes from unknown, you're out of luck. And I hate checking voicemail. Please don't ever leave me a voicemail. But a text would be great. It's very short. It gets to the point. I know who sent it. So find out from the client what the best way to contact them is. And for a lot of my clients, that means texting. And so for me, that means that I will get texts at all manner of the day and night. That doesn't really work for me. So I, first of all, put my phone on D&D. We've got a do not disturb, and there's certain times a day where text will still come through. I just won't know what happens unless I pick up my phone and look at it. And once they come through, I usually, unless I'm concerned that it is something incredibly urgent, I usually don't even open them, because then that little blue dot goes away and then I forget because I think I've already looked at it and dealt with it and everything else. So lots of times I won't even open it until business hours the next morning. But I do not want to respond to a text message at 9:30 at night, because sometimes I like to be sleeping at 9:30 at night. And if you think about it, that's really not unreasonable. 9:30 p.m. on a weeknight for a grown-up who got up early and went to a job and worked all day long might be tired. It's not unreasonable. So even if I happen to be sitting up wide awake in my bed munching popcorn and watching a new episode of something on Netflix, that's my time. It is not working hours. And as soon as I respond to that text at 9:30 at night, I have now set the expectation for my client that it is okay to contact me then. That they can get a hold of me, that I will respond, that we can discuss the contract that they're working on and their home inspection addendum, and they can ask me if we can go see the house again tomorrow. And 9:30 at night is not the time for that to happen. So if I get those calls or those texts or those emails, unless it is incredibly urgent, I let it go. Now, as soon as the next morning rolls around, I am right on top of that. So 8 o'clock the next morning, I will respond to a text. I used to push it back till 9, but really, at least on the East Coast, stuff's moving by 8 o'clock, and I don't want to forget to do that. If you're employing this method, it's important that you stay on top of things. You can do it during reasonable working hours, but make sure that you are on top of it. And as soon as that working hour comes about, whatever it is for you, maybe you work with a bunch of people who are day sleepers and they work at night. Whatever those hours are that are going to work properly, make sure you get back to those messages. So train your clients how to treat you and take control back of that time. You only get so much of it. It's just like real estate. They ain't making any more of it. We've got all we're ever going to have to work with right here in front of us. Same thing with time. It is too valuable of a thing to spend stressed out and wasted. So teach your clients how to treat you, set limits, and set appointments, and then keep them. Not that hard. So the next thing we talked about was everybody has to live somewhere. And they already do. So now what do? If we wait around long enough, somebody will probably need to move. Somebody will have to downsize or maybe move out of the area, relocate for a job. Maybe, everybody's empty nesting and the grandparents or parents want to move to something smaller. It does eventually happen. However, in the meantime, while you're waiting for each individual relative to eventually get tired of where they are and want to move on, what are you going to do with that time? Because you can't count on everybody moving. You can't count on the people that know and love you to trust you with that financial decision. Sometimes people aren't comfortable with that, and sometimes that's okay. I've sold homes to family members, and I have stepped out of the room of my own volition when they're discussing finances with the builder or with the lender. I don't need to intimately know the financial details of my family member's life, and it can be very uncomfortable. It's one of the reasons that it's not always a good idea to work with friends and family. So if you are fortunate enough for them to choose you, first of all, please have someone help you. Have someone who has done this before help you. And then moving on, you're not going to have that happen every day. So in the meantime, you need to work on reminding people how awesome you are. You need to work on you don't have to say, I actually talked to someone one time who would systematically call everyone they knew and remind them that they were a realtor. Hey, you ready to buy an investment property? Hey, are you ready to move? You want me to list that house? no kidding, called, and he actually said to me, he got to the point where people didn't want to pick up the phone. He would call and no one would answer because he was so obnoxious about it. He really was door-to-door snake oil salesman about it, and I told him to stop that. And he said, well, I did. I mean, they stopped answering my calls, so I kind of had to. I'm not sure why anyone would think that's a good idea, but please don't do that. But stay in front of people so that when the time comes, you are the person they think of. Now, that may be farming. That may mean that you need to consistently get your information, maybe some relevant market data, and definitely some contact information in front of a particular geographical sphere. Maybe it's a neighborhood. Make sure you know the neighborhood so that if you happen to have your postcard in front of the right face at the right time and you don't just immediately get chucked into the recycle bin, because that's going to happen more often than not, which is okay. They just need to count on you coming in their mail on a regular basis. Make sure that you know something when they call you. So when they call and say, hey, I live over here on Main Street and I've been getting your postcards and we're thinking about making a move, what do you think about the market? Make sure you know where Main Street is. You didn't just go to EDDM and click on a button and every door direct mail, the post office has been taking something to their house every single month and you've just been paying the credit card bill, or at least trying to, because you haven't sold a house yet and now money's starting to get tight and you're wondering if it's worth it. And keep doing it. You got to be consistent in whatever method you use, but know where Main Street is. Know how many houses are for sale in that area. Know approximately how long it's taking them to sell. How many days on market? What sort of general price point? You certainly don't want to go around quoting numbers on the phone to a property you've never seen, but generally, what's going on in that area? If you're going to take some of that quiet time to walk around, maybe clear your head and take a walk, schedule it for that neighborhood so that you're familiar with the names of the streets. You can say, oh yeah, I did see those crazy Halloween decorations that the neighbors put up down on the corner. Holy moly, scares me at night. Just know something about the area. When I walk in neighborhoods that I farm, I take a plastic grocery bag with me and I pick up trash, because that's just something that happens. People litter, people throw trash around. And if anybody happens to cross my path, if I speak to someone who's out walking their dog or watering their lawn, I want to be remembered as somebody who cared about that area. So I carry a bag with me and I pick up trash as I'm going around and just try to make my farm a little bit nicer. You also need to work on your sphere. And I know that that can be a really tough thing for some people. A lot of people think they don't know anyone. I can tell you it's definitely easier for parents of young children, I think, than probably any other group of people, because you have built-in friends. You automatically will have friends at preschool. You will have the ladies in the front office at the elementary school. You will have PTO. You will have Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. You will have camping trips. You will have birthday parties. Pop the kids in gymnastics. Just about every county offers some sort of recreational program, whether it's flag football or soccer or volleyball or gymnastics or swimming. There's a way to get involved in your community. And here's the best part. While you're building these connections, while you're meeting people and you're having a little chat with a lady sitting next to you while both of you wait for your children to finish up in the locker room, you're also showing these people that you're not just selling the homes in their area. You are their area. You're living in their area. You are a part of this community. You're not just selling the community. It matters to you. You're a part of it. And that's a really important distinction. So that's how you're going to go from being this crazy salesperson over here trying to get everybody's money to now I'm somebody who wants to make sure that things happen well, that the property values are protected, that we're making the right decisions, and I know enough about this area because I live here to be able to tell you about it and to be able to welcome you in. So maybe you need to volunteer at the pet shelter, and maybe you can read books to blind dogs or something. Well, I don't know what your specialty is, but whatever it is, be active and involved in your community. Be someone who is known. I'm sure you've heard the term be the mayor of whatever town. So if your subdivision is, Main Street subdivision, be the mayor of Main Street subdivision. Be the person that when people think, oh gosh, I don't know who I'm going to call because all of a sudden my water bill is 3 times the rate it normally is, who do I call? You know what? I'll call Laura. She knows. She'll know who to call and we'll get this all fixed out. And that's what you want. You want to be a resource. So staying in front of that sphere is so, so, so important. You need to have a plan. You don't want to just say, oh, well, everybody I know, I've gone on Facebook, and, you know, when they put pictures of their kids, I post some balloon emojis and it's fine. You know, you can't do just a quick click a like and move on and think that people are going to remember who you are. I don't look at likes. Now, once Facebook came out with the different emojis, so now you have a like and a heart and a ha-ha face and a sad face and an angry and, oh, the wow face is always fun. I just never really know quite, like, am I wow because I can't believe that somebody would actually say that, or am I wow because that's really amazing? There are too many applications for all of these different little buttons, but unless all of a sudden I look and I have a whole bunch of likes on something I've put, I don't really stop and scroll through a list. Like, Facebook will tell me so-and-so and 37 other people like this post. Okay, well, that's great. Good for those 37 people, but I don't click it. Have you ever even done that? Has anybody ever done that? Where you click the little like on the side to see the list of who's actually clicked and like on your... Nobody does that. You might be the exception, but nobody really does that. What people notice is when you click on your Facebook notifications, it'll show you on the side a little green square if somebody talked to you. And that's the interaction you're going for. People get excited when they see that somebody actually took the time to type something rather than just click like and move on. So maybe everyone you know is in Facebook land. Maybe you don't know a soul. You're going to have to get working on that. But maybe you don't know a soul. Make sure that you're utilizing that and maximizing that in the best possible way. Now, going back to the phone call earlier, don't go on Facebook and tell everybody you know, hey, I'm a realtor. Remember, I'm a realtor. By the way, if you're ready to sell your house, I'm a realtor. Maybe not so much. But when somebody says, you know, hey, all of a sudden all the grass in my yard is dying and I don't know who to call, you can be the person that pipes up and says, hey, you should call Bob's Green Landscaping. They're going to do a great job. They did my neighbor's house. You should call them. Maybe you're so new to an area that you don't even know who they should call. But you can be the person that Googles it. And you can say, hey, I've not actually used them, but these people have a 4.7 star review on Yelp, and they're right down the street, so maybe you should give them a call and see if they can get you in. There are ways to solve problems for people that make you a valuable resource and that help them remember you. They remember that you were helpful. They remember that you took time for them. And those are the sorts of things that down the road will come back to them as long as you're staying in front of them, because people forget too. You know, if you send them a postcard and then they don't hear from you for 4 months and they decide to sell their house, they're going to go to the Google. Now it's their turn. So make sure that you take that time, stay in front of your sphere, and work on it. So love your people now. And then when it's time, they will love you back later. They will remember you. And that's when everybody has to live somewhere. They're done living in the somewhere that they currently have, and they're ready to move on to the next place. And that's where you come in. All right? So the next thing we're going to talk about is one deal will pay for everything. Yeah. It's true. I mean, I can't try to tell you that it's not true unless you have some sort of like incredibly low price point and incredibly exorbitant fees. Yes, technically, one deal will probably pay for everything. It'll probably pay for your licensing class and your dues and your lockbox fees and your MLS, and you add all of that up, at least for like maybe your first quarter or half the year. Yes, okay, one deal will pay for everything. But that's not how budgets work. So let's say that between all of those just basic things, now we're not talking about marketing, we're not talking about gas, we're not talking about a professional wardrobe that you should probably invest in. We haven't even begun to talk about RPAC yet and some investment that you should be looking at there, but just the basic fees, right? For the first year, let's say that those are $2,000. And let's say that your first commission check is $2,000. Yes, now you have paid for everything. But come spring and next year, the IRS is going to want their part of that $2,000. Do you have it? Have you thought about that? Do you have different buckets of money? Are you planning and prepared for that? Because remember, we talked about before, you're your own boss and you're the boss of the budget. So have you thought about what you're going to do when Uncle Sam comes knocking and wants to know what happened to that $2,000 you made and where's his cut? So yes, one deal will probably pay for everything, but that's not how budgets work. So generally, 22% of a $75,000 income, so if you've done your business plan and you know that I want to make $75,000 this year, round number, up or down, everything's available on irs.gov. They'll tell you exactly how much money you're going to end up having to pay based on what your household income is. But let's say $75,000 is what you're planning on. You need to set aside 22% of everything you earn in a separate account to be ready for that day to come, because it's coming like clockwork. Death and taxes, it's coming. So that's how it works. This is how adulting works. This is how business people work. This is how realtors have to operate. That independent contractor status is super duper until you realize that there's a whole lot of responsibility there. So you have to budget. And taxes are way up there on the list of things you budget for. Now, there are very simple ways to do things. I've heard Lee talk about how you can do a 10, 20, 30, 40. So 10% goes to tithing or some sort of charitable giving. 20% immediately goes to a tax fund. 30% goes back into your budget for marketing your business. And 40% can be where you draw your salary. Whatever those numbers need to be adjusted, because as we look at 20% on this particular income, it needs to be 22, so you're going to have to come up with a way to get that extra 2%. This is why you plan, and this is why you budget, so that you'll have a pretty fair idea of what you need to plan for. And every time you get a paycheck, you immediately divide it up. So in this case, 22% of that paycheck needs to go to a separate account. I have accounts set up with, I call them my offshore accounts, and I don't need the government coming after me. They're not really offshore accounts, but I call them that in my head. But I have accounts at an online bank where I can't even access it for 2 business days. And it has saved me so much money. I don't even want to tell you how many times I probably would have impulse bought something and I couldn't because I have to click the button for them. Now I can access it, but it takes 2 business days for it to hit my regular bank account. So when I divide money up, I ship it out there. I have an account specifically for taxes. The only thing that goes in that is taxes, and nothing ever comes out unless I'm cutting a check to the government. If my car breaks down, I've got to find another way to pay for the repairs on that car. It's not coming out of the tax money. The last thing you want to do is be behind on taxes. You do not want to have the IRS breathing down your neck. You don't want to end up having wages taken away and other things removed from you. The stress alone is enough reason to budget that money. So when the money comes in, you're going to put some in the tax bucket. You're going to put some in your marketing bucket, because we just figured out that you're going to need to talk to some people if you'd like to sell some houses, because the people already have some place to live, so you're going to have to go find somebody else that you don't already know to sell or help them buy a house. So have a marketing budget. Once you start budgeting for those things, and you sell a house and you put a little bit more in, and you sell a house and you put a little bit more in, the things that seemed really expensive and unavailable suddenly become a lot more reasonable because the money's there. And you're putting it in chunks, but you've researched what you're going to do for marketing. You've researched how much those postcards are going to cost, or how much that radio ad is going to cost, or how much some Facebook boosting is going to cost. You already know what you're doing. And so as you put those chunks in, every time you sell a house, you're only pulling out a little bit to keep this plan going. And you can relax. You know that you've got a plan in place. It's amazing how much simpler things get once you plan and prepare for them. So you're going to have money in taxes. You're going to have money in marketing. You have to put money aside for yourself. Even when you are down to the wire and the bills have got to get paid, you have got to find a way to pay yourself. And some people will recommend you pay yourself first. Personally, I recommend you pay the taxes first, because that is so important. But you have to pay yourself first. Otherwise, you're going to end up so burned out, and you're not even going to see why you're doing this anymore. So maybe you set it up so that you put money from each check in an account, and automatically every other Friday, it deposits a certain amount into your regular banking system. Maybe every time you have a closing, you go for a pedicure. It's a pretty inexpensive thing that you can do to treat yourself and to remind yourself, like, hey, I'm doing these things, and eventually it'll be a manicure too, and you'll work your way up. But make sure that you set aside something for yourself. So then beyond that, there are other things that you can do. So some people have a fund set aside just for like home projects. Maybe they want to put in a pool, so they've divided a little bit out of each thing and they're going to put money aside for the pool fund. Whatever it is that you do, just make a plan and stick to it, because anything will work as long as you're consistent. Okay? So yes, one deal will pay for everything. I'm not going to try to argue, but I would like you to think a little bit more about that. The next point we talked about was being your own boss. Okay, you're the boss of everything. Congratulations. You can ask yourself for a raise and see how far those things go. And you're going to be in there and you're doing the bossing around of stuff, and you're doing the scheduling, and you're doing the admin, and you're doing the finances, and you're doing the marketing, and you're doing all of it. And it turns out that really you're a closer. You love the chase. So those leads come in, and nothing gets you going more than taking those leads, converting them, getting that appointment, getting into that listing appointment, talking to people, and getting the contract signed. That is your jam. And that's great. Being able to identify what it is that you like to do is so incredibly important. So that leaves an awful lot off to the side that maybe you don't do well. I'm hoping you still at least try to do it, because some of it has to be done. There is compliance to be thought of. But once you get to this point where you're looking at this going, I'm my own boss and my employee is a jerk, take a step back. How can you simplify this process? Is there a way that other people can help you? Is there somebody else in your office that maybe really loves to put data in the MLS, and they can put stuff in the MLS for you, and maybe you can go back and, I don't know, place signs for them, or help them design a flyer, a one-sheeter for their next open house. Maybe they'll let you sit their open house because they're really more introverted and they don't like dealing with the general public and the unknown of that, but they can help you in some other way. Maybe you're doing well enough that now's a really good time to consider an assistant, or if nothing else, a virtual assistant who can help with some of that administrative work. You can also consider maybe looking at, especially depending on the time of year, the high school or a local college, and see if there's somebody who is in a line of education that aligns up with the path that you're taking. So if marketing is not your thing, maybe there's an art major who loves graphic design and would be willing for, a very small fee, or maybe just the experience and a letter of recommendation, to come in over the summer and help you revamp your brand or your flyers or something like that. But delegate that, because there are things that are not worth your time. And you don't need to be too proud to put a post in the ground, but if there are opportunities out there for a higher level of income and you are spending time running flyers to a vacant listing, which of those is a better use of your time? So maybe you can hire a concierge service who can just do some gopher for you, Girl Friday sort of thing. So somebody can come and pick the stuff up at your office and take it where you need it to be, and that leaves you free to go on another listing appointment. So yes, you're your own boss, but you might be a really crappy person to work for. So think about those things. Think about how you can delegate and put a team around you. You've already, to some extent, got a team. I mean, you're not doing the mortgage, I don't suppose. So you've got a preferred mortgage person. You've got a broker you can go to ask questions. You've got other agents in your office that maybe could, take a showing for you every now and then if you absolutely had to go get a root canal. You've got a favorite title company or attorney that you're using for closing. So you've already, your pest guy and your home warranty people. You've already got a little bit of a team that you're starting to establish around you. So just take that a step further and don't do all the things because you suck at some of them. Okay? So teamwork makes the dream work. I am all about the cliche phrases, and they are not over. There will be more before this is done. But this is true, and this will save you a lot of heartache. Teamwork makes the dream work. Speaking of cliche phrases, you will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. This is where we get back to easy money, right? So we all knew before we even walked in this door that easy money is a great big fat lie. It just is. There is no such thing as easy money. The only easy day was yesterday. Easy money does not exist. But if you are doing a job you love and you are working with people that make you happy, by and large, not every single person is going to float your boat, but if you are doing a good job at a job you love, it's going to feel easy sometimes. At the very least, it's not going to feel like drudgery. You should not feel like a rat on a wheel every single day. It should almost feel easy. Now, you want challenges. You want to learn new things. You don't want it to be lazy, because there's a big difference between lazy and something being easy. Get good at what you do. Look for educational opportunities. I don't know if you've been in the business 6 months or 6 years, I'll bet you can find somebody who's been in the business a little bit longer than you. Spend the day with them. I have absolutely gone into more experienced agents' offices, sat down in a chair in the corner, and stayed there. And just listened. I've done it to an agent, it wasn't even at my firm. Thank goodness, I knew him, but he kind of looked at me and I said, I'm just here to observe. And I listened and I learned so much. He was dealing with contracts and he was talking to people on the phone and he was setting appointments. Every now and then he'd turn around and look at me and he'd throw a little nugget of wisdom my way. And every now and then I'd think of a question and I'd get his opinion on it. He's a great agent and I learned a lot from him, and I did that more than once. I'm not too proud to say that I don't know everything. Now, don't tell Jeff, don't tell my husband, because that's something he doesn't need to know. But in reality, keep learning and keep loving what you do, because that's what's going to make this easy, and that's what's going to turn easy money in real estate from the biggest lie that was ever told to the best truth that you can possibly have. So that's one that we want to be true no matter what. What's going to make that possible is planning. You have got to have a business plan. And you have to plan with your heart and with your head. Now, planning with your heart is not something I really was much into back in the beginning. So planning with your heart, by that I mean dream a little. Have a vision board. I used to think vision boards were the hokiest things, right? And I don't actually have a literal board where I've written a ransom letter in magazine cutouts of what I dream my life to be. That's not really, now for some people that's awesome and good on you if that's you. That's not me. But you need to think about things. I had someone once, I'm sure you've all heard this before, it was news to me a couple of years ago the first time I heard it, but I had someone once say, what would you do if I give you $100? And I had no answer. And you couldn't pay a bill, and you couldn't give it away, and you couldn't donate to a charity, and you couldn't, buy coupons to use it later, or, gift cards. You had to spend it on you, and I had no answer. And we went through this whole process where it incrementally went up. So then first it was 100, and then it was 1,000, and then it was 10,000. And at the end of my story, what I ended up with was time. I would have done things to buy myself time. I would have outsourced things that I'd prefer to not be spending time on, and I would have paid someone else to do those things to buy time. And that was really eye-opening for me. And once I knew that, and what would I do with that time if I actually had it, I was able to structure my business in a way that allowed for that time to happen. So I planned a little with my heart so that I could plan with my head. Now when I sit down and when I'm talking about planning with your head, I'm talking about crunching numbers, I'm talking about the reality of budgeting, I'm talking about a marketing plan, I'm talking about an education plan. You're not going to be in business very long if you forget to do your CE and they take your license away. You have to have a plan. And it's all cake from there. That's a lie. It's never going to be all cake. But you have a way to move through. When things are slow and you're stressed because you don't know what your next deal is going to be and you don't know what to do about it, you go back to the plan. Like, oh yeah, it's July. So in July, I've got to send out these postcards and I've got to contact these 4 people with handwritten notes and I need to have lunch with this mortgage person. You don't have to worry about it because you've written it out. It's on your plan. You follow the plan. And eventually you're going to need to pivot. You're going to have a plot twist and this isn't working anymore and you're going to have to rewrite that plan, and that's okay. But having a place to start and a plan to follow is the most important thing, and that's what's going to make it possible for you to love what you do. And if all else fails, love one another. It's kind of my theme for this year. It sounds a little bit cheesy, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. One of the things that we fall back on as realtors is the golden rule. And that's kind of where this comes back to. So I just want to thank you all so very much for having me here today. Got my contact information up on the screen. I appreciate your time, and I will certainly be around for a little bit. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to help. Thank you all very much.